Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are wading into some pretty tricky territory. We're talking about navigating the dark conversation. You know, those high emotion, high tension talks we just read.
The ones you put off for weeks.
Exactly. Like finally confronting your supervisor about why you got passed over for that promotion, or trying to find a resolution with a friend after a really big betrayal.
Or even just trying to de-escalate a fight with your spouse that's going off the rails. These conversations have so much power over us because they push us way out of our comfort zone.
They're high stakes.
Incredibly high stakes. And our source material for this dive comes from someone who lived in the highest stakes imaginable. We're pulling these frameworks from a former Secret Service agent.
30 years in law enforcement, a SWAT officer.
Right. Someone who used science-backed interrogation techniques on some of the world's best liars. He trained teams from the FBI to the CIA.
And that context is so powerful. But I think it's really crucial to say this up front. This deep dive isn't about interrogation. Not at all.
No, it's about connection. It's about taking those same very precise frameworks from high-stakes communication and applying them to build, real, authentic connection in our everyday lives.
Our mission here is really to move you from that feeling of confusion to confidence. We want to give you an actionable plan, specifically the PLAN framework, so you can stop walking away from these talks, just replaying them in your head, wondering what went wrong.
And we're going to start with a foundational shift, a change you have to make before you even walk into that room.
Okay.
The first, most critical piece of advice from this specialist is actually pretty simple. Stop labeling the person you are talking to.
Wow, okay. That hits home immediately because we are just swimming in pop psychology terms these days, right?
Absolutely.
You hear it all the time. I need to talk to my manager, but they're such a narcissist. Or my partner is definitely gaslighting me. But isn't there some utility in the label? I mean, if my partner truly is showing a destructive pattern, isn't acknowledging that the first step, even if I don't say it out loud?
It feels useful, but it is a trap. The moment you overtly label somebody, let's say as a narcissist, you've just given yourself an emotional shortcut to blame.
And out.
It's a total out. That label lets you put the entire burden of the conversation's failure on them. And that stops you from being genuinely curious about who this person is and why they act that way. Communication experts know that empathy is, it's highly situational. And if you assign a fixed label, you stop seeing the human and you lose any chance you have to influence the interaction.
That completely reframes what curiosity is for.
Right.
Okay, so beyond labels, let's talk about another habit that just derails connection. And it's something we do to try and fast-track empathy, telling people, I understand.
Right. It's one of those well-meaning things we say, and it's also one of the most counterproductive.
How so?
Well, look, you can understand a person's words, absolutely. You can process the data they're giving you, but you will never, ever understand the full, specific depth of their unique headspace, their lived experience, or the totality of their feelings in that one moment.
So when I jump in with, oh, I completely understand my dad passed away too, I think I'm building a bridge, but what am I actually doing?
You are unintentionally hijacking their moment. You're taking their unique, painful experience, and you're making the conversation about you, about your past trauma.
I'm centering myself.
You've centered yourself instead of staying curious about their pain. You've stopped the flow of information because you assumed it was a shared experience, instead of staying open to all the subtle, specific ways their experience is different. To deepen the relationship, you have to stay curious about their world, not just use it as a trigger for your own story.
That is a subtle big fire. Wow, a really profound insight. Okay, so now that we know what to stop doing, let's unpack the core framework, the one designed for moving forward these conversations, PLAN. Let's start with P, purpose.
Purpose is your anchor. It has to be your mission statement for that conversation. Why are you sitting here right now? You have to be crystal clear on your goal because, especially when things get emotional, it is so easy to get distracted.
By insults or side arguments?
All of it. And if you lose your cool, you lose control of the outcome. And usually that's because you lost sight of your core purpose.
And we're often juggling multiple goals at once, right? The source material calls this the multiple goals theory. There's the task goal, what needs to get done.
Right.
The identity goal, how we want to feel about ourselves, and the relational goal, the state of the relationship.
And that's where the chaos happens, when those goals collide. Imagine your boss makes a factual mistake in a huge presentation. Your task goal is to correct the error right now.
Get the right information out there.
But your relational goal, keeping your job, and your identity goal, not looking like the office know-it-all those, probably outweigh the immediate need to be right. If you only think about the task, you could sacrifice your career. You have to define your primary purpose, or else your emotions will just pull you right off track.
That alignment is everything. Which, that leads us perfectly to LL, is for, listen, this is the one everyone says is the hardest part of communication.
It is, and the brain science really explains why we're so bad at it. It's an issue of cognitive bandwidth.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Your internal thoughts, your vocabulary, it's running at like 800 to 1,000 words a minute, but the person talking to you, they're only delivering information at about 120 to 150 words a minute.
So my brain is just idling, waiting for them to catch up.
Exactly. Your brain can process speech roughly 3 times faster than you hear it. You have all this massive excess bandwidth, and that leads to your mind drifting or checking out or, and this is the most common one, rehearsing your reply.
We're listening with the intent to reply, not the intent to understand. So if that excess bandwidth is the problem, what's the solution? How do we actually practice what you call cognitive inhibition and force ourselves to focus?
You have to make your brain use that bandwidth productively. Secret Service agents, they train themselves to do what we call mental summarizing. So instead of letting your mind wander, you are actively, in your head, summarizing the last 3 sentences you just heard.
Oh, interesting.
You can also use nonverbal cues. Physically lean forward, maintain eye contact, maybe even take a quick note. These physical actions force your prefrontal cortex to stay online and engaged with them, not with your own internal monologue. Real control in a conversation comes from listening, not from talking.
And if we're truly listening to understand, that brings us right to A, ask questions. This seems so vital for deepening relationships and fighting back against what the source calls Mimi syndrome, that failure to actually probe someone else's reality.
Exactly. We vastly overestimate our ability to mind read. I mean, the research on empathy accuracy is just brutal.
That is it.
Even with the people you are closest to, your significant other, your accuracy in knowing what they are thinking or feeling is no higher than 40%. You have less than a 4 in 10 chance of being right.
And the most shocking stat for me was that when the conversation gets emotional, that accuracy just plummets down to 15%. Why the crash?
Because your ego goes online and your ears go offline.
Huh.
When things get emotionally charged, your system perceives a threat, maybe a threat to your identity goal. And your body shifts into self-protection mode. You stop hearing the nuances of their pain or their anger, and you start focusing entirely on your defense. And when you are defensive, you cannot be curious.
Okay, so if asking is critical, how do we ask about the nonverbal stuff?
Yeah.
You know, the 66% of communication. That's not words. I can't just say, why are you hostile?
Ooh.
Because your arms are crossed.
Never assume. Assumption puts you on the wrong track immediately. You have to use what we call tentative language to check the data you're seeing. So instead of, I think you're angry, which is an accusation, you say, it seems like, or I'm noticing. You depersonalize the observation. For instance, in a meeting, you suggest something and you see them roll their eyes or cross their arms. You don't say, why are you being hostile? You frame it as a choice for them. You say, I noticed when I suggested X, you leaned back. It seems like you didn't approve of that plan. Do I have that right?
And that forces them to explain their internal state.
Exactly. It opens the door for explanation, not escalation. You maintain curiosity, and you maintain control.
Okay, so we have P, L, and A. The final part of the framework is N, next steps, the resolution stage.
And this is where most people fail, because they start at some vague agreement. The resolution has to be tangible. It has to be mutually beneficial. You have to clarify exactly what moving forward looks like in practice.
People will agree to anything just to end a painful conversation.
Yeah.
And then later they realize they didn't really agree on anything concrete.
Precisely. You have to move from the abstract to the concrete. So you ask them, do you see an amicable way forward? If they say yes, you immediately define it. With a spouse, for example, don't just agree to be better communicators.
Which means nothing.
It means nothing. You ask, okay, what does that look like for us? Specifically, what behaviors will we each commit to this week to make sure that happens? You assign clear actions, expectations, maybe even timelines.
And this is where the difference between influence and manipulation is so important.
Absolutely critical. Your next steps must be about influence nudging the person toward an outcome that's good for both of you. That takes honesty. If your resolution only benefits you or you have to lie to get there, that's manipulation, and it just destroys trust. The resolution has to serve the relational goal.
Let's talk about those moments of high conflict, the ones that just shatter composure. What if you're trying to stick to your purpose, but the other person just starts insulting you, like in that customer service call center example?
You have to engage in what's called non-reactive confrontation. Your tone has to stay clinical, specific, curious. You don't match their emotion. Don't just say, "Stop being rude." It's too vague.
So what do you say?
You stick to your purpose and you address the behavior head on. "I notice that you just called me a name and are speaking to me in a condescending tone. I am committed to helping you solve this, but I can't do that effectively while being insulted. Can you please explain why you needed to use that language just now?"
You make them justify the emotion.
You make them back it up. You're showing them you're not afraid to name the behavior, but you're also not going to sacrifice your professionalism by getting into the mud with them. This reinforces the golden rule they learn in law enforcement. In any conversation, if you lose your cool, you lose control.
That brings to mind that intense story of the internal affairs investigator who was interviewing a subject accused of road rage.
Yeah, a perfect example. The investigator was there for facts, but the subject was loud, aggressive, calling the investigator a liar. And the investigator, his ego, got the best of him. He lost sight of his purpose, started yelling back, and screamed, "I think you're a liar!"
And in that moment,
He became the aggressor. He sacrificed his strategic professionalism for his ego. He became, as they say, the jerk in the room, and he lost complete control of the mission.
wow, that is a tough mirror to hold up. I think we've all been the jerk in the room when our ego takes over. That composure is so essential for building rapport, for building a real connection. How does someone in the Secret Service build rapport with a subject who actively does not want to talk to them?
Well, rapport isn't about being nice. It's not about compliments. It's built by understanding a person's values and reducing their ambiguity. In one high-stakes interview, the subject was completely shut down.
Right.
But the agent found out he was terrified because his sick mother was in jail and needed her medication. The agent stopped the interview completely. He followed through and made sure the mother was checked on and cared for. He showed through his actions that he was committed to the subject's welfare, even while they were adversaries.
That's authenticity.
It's total authenticity. That commitment builds trust, both in yourself and with the other person. It showed he was a reliable influence, not some manipulative opportunist.
So to recap here, the key takeaways for navigating these dark conversations seem really clear. First, stop labeling people.
Yep.
Stop saying, "I understand," and use the PLAN framework purpose. Listen, ask, next steps. To stay anchored, maintain your composure, and really prioritize strategic control over just getting that emotional hit.
If you take command of yourself and your actions, you handle yourself like a professional, even when the conversation gets ugly. You move from just reacting to being intentional.
And speaking of being intentional, the source material had this powerful insight on leadership and managing uncertainty, which feels so relevant here. We saw that study where students were just paralyzed. They couldn't make a decision because they didn't know their exam results yet.
That ambiguity of not knowing, it just lessens our cognitive ability to move in any direction. When we don't know the outcome, we often just choose to do nothing. And that's exactly what happens in these conversations. You're making decisions about a relationship under high emotional ambiguity.
And this inability to decide when you have low certainty is what separates average communicators from great leaders. Great leaders can decide even when they don't have all the information. I mean, President Obama making the bin Laden call at 51% certainty is the classic example. You have to be prepared to own a choice based on the best data you have right now.
Right. You can't live your life in reverse with hindsight bias. If you wait for 100% certainty, you will never act. The power comes from making a decision, owning it with the information you had at the time, and trusting yourself to adapt to what comes next.
And that ties back into these huge life choices. So many people choose the certain misery of their current job or relationship over the uncertainty of change. They're just afraid to make a high-stakes decision without a guaranteed win.
And to succeed in these dark conversations, you have to build self-trust. Trust that you can execute the PLAN, and trust that you can handle the consequences of whatever choice you make.
So we'll leave you with a final provocative thought for this week. Where in your life are you choosing the comfort of certain misery, that known, uncomfortable path, over the low certainty path to real meaningful change? Look at your next difficult conversation, choose to act with the best information you have right now, and own the resolution. We hope this deep dive has given you the framework to take command of that moment.